In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some really important design principles when it comes to creating your layouts for your LED signs. Now, what I'm about to show you, I've never really ever seen discussed on any video on YouTube. And I've watched literally hundreds, perhaps even thousands of videos on creating LED signs when I was first learning how the process works. And what I found was, as I was watching those videos, number one, they didn't really show you from the very beginning to the very end. They just showed you kind of bits and pieces. And then number two, um, it was very repetitious. So it didn't matter really what video you're watching, you're kind of watching the exact same process. And you would think, well, that's probably just the way everybody does it. But I'm here to tell you, uh, I saw immediately that is not the process that I care to use. So I went about kind of creating my own process. Arguably, I think it is a better process how I use it. I've created some tools to help me be able to create my signs quicker and easier. But in this video, we're really just going to talk about some basic design principles that are really important no matter how you actually wind up producing your LED signs. So this is an example sign that I sent to a customer recently. This is what they requested. I have no idea what that means, but this is what they wanted, so that's what we're going to make them. So I start by kind of creating this mock-up. And once the mock-up is approved, now I have to actually go about creating the sign itself. But in order to do that, we've got to kind of go into production mode. Well, this sign, this layout is not ready for production. I have to make it ready for production. And what does all that entail? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. And like I said, I've never seen it really discussed uh, on YouTube on any video how to actually go about creating the artwork for your LED signs. Now, I don't know if there's a better way, an easier way than what I'm about to show you. But this is just kind of a way that I've developed for myself that is working for me. Now, I'm like the rest of you. I wish it was simpler and not as complicated, but I've not yet discovered how to make it quicker and easier. What my concern is that we get the results ultimately that we're looking to get. So, what do we need to talk about? Well, first of all, there's basically two different products when it comes to creating LED signs. One product is the LED strip itself, the light strip is embedded in a silicone diffuser. And then the secondary product is a two-part product where the light strip is separate from the diffuser. And both sides have some pluses and minuses to them. I would argue that the vast majority of the videos that you're going to see online are the one part where they're actually taking the LED strip inside the silicone diffuser and gluing it to a backer board of some sort and making the sign that way. And while that works, obviously, because there's lots of videos that show how that works, to me, it's a little bit tedious to do it that way. And so I knew right away, for number one, if I could avoid using glue, then I definitely wanted to avoid using glue. So I've kind of developed a system where you don't have to use glue. So that's step number one. We don't have to worry about making a mess with glue. So that was my first hurdle. I wanted to make sure I covered that. And then secondly, on the two-part LED neon, the one could argue that that is a better product to use, but the other consideration is it's twice as expensive, nearly twice as expensive. So the product itself is almost double the cost. Now, when you say, well, it's twice as much, well, that's true. It is twice as much, but in the actual production end of it, if it's not as complicated as the one part, and then maybe paying twice as much for the core product isn't such a terrible thing. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still kind of on the fence. Uh, both products, I'm going to show you here in just a second. I'm going to show you some signs that we've done. both products will yield you a great looking sign that your customers are going to be very happy with. So that should be upfront. How the product is actually manufactured, and how you produce the LED sign, well, there's definitely some pluses and minuses on both sides of the coin. So, like I said, I think it's going to be helpful if we look at some signs and talk about some design considerations. So, let's just look at our first sign. Okay, so this is essentially how we create all of our signs and how we differentiate from most of the videos you'll see out there. So when we're talking about a one-part LED strip, and you can see here, I think you can see this strip, how this is, right? Okay, so this is one part LED neon, and this um, this strip can only be cut in certain increments. So, for example, on this strip, we can only cut every 0.98 of an inch. And depending on the strip that you're using will depend on how frequently you can cut your strip. And this is what's really, really important. Because, like I said, you can only cut it in certain spots. So, like our LED strips that we sell, is every 0.98 of an inch, or it's 2.5 centimeters. And that's kind of the industry standard. Now, they do sell LED strips that are more expensive that you can cut more frequently. So, an example, for most of your LED strips, it's 2.5 centimeters, which is 0.98 of an inch. So roughly every 1 inch you can cut. And there's 3 LEDs in that 1 inch strip. Okay, that's the most common. But they do sell a uh, a strip that you can cut every 1 LED, and so the it's actually 1 centimeter spacing instead of 2.5 centimeters. So depending on what you like and your particular need, you might like that other strip. Now, for me, it's not a big deal because there isn't also a cost factor there. So, because you can cut it every single LED instead of every third, it's more expensive. And it's fairly considerably more expensive. It's like half again as much. So if it costs $10 for the standard LED strip, then the one that you can cut every single LED is $15. Okay, kind of that scenario. So it is considerably more expensive. Now, are there cases where that you might actually want to do that and use that strip? Possibly, yes. But I think as you begin to learn and really understand what all the options are, I think you'll find that it's really not worth the added expense to be almost half again as much for the few scenarios that you would need to use that type of strip. So, and the fact of the matter is, when we get into talking about the two-part LED, then you definitely don't care, because I think most of you will probably either use one or the other. Um, and I don't know. I'm kind of I still produce both types of signs. So I'm a little bit on the fence as to if one's better than the other, because a lot of my customers are very concerned about price. And if we're talking about price, well, then the one part LED neon is definitely cheaper. So, and as far as fiddling with is one production process better than the other, I think once you actually know what you're doing, I don't think there's a significant difference in the two different ways to produce a sign. So to me, it's not that big a deal. All right. So with that said, let's take a look at Abby here. So this is a sign. It says Abby. Obviously, you can see that. And what we do is we take, first of all, all of our backers are a solid back, a solid opaque back. Okay, almost across the board. Now that's not necessarily true with our two-part LED neon, but with our one-part LED neon, that's definitely true. Um, Always a solid backer because all the wiring is hidden behind that backer board. The one-part LED neon, the wiring is not hidden, so you don't have to hide the wiring, and we're going to explain all that. But just know that in this particular case, we're using a solid backer. And so what we do is we route a groove into the wood, and then our LED strip will just kind of set right in there. It's tight enough where we don't have to use glue. We can just kind of push it into place. Okay. But what do you see here? All these grooves are cut into this wood, yes, but they're cut exactly precisely. So this comes around and bends around, but it cuts right at that 0.98 of an inch. So all these, so this is one segment, 0.98 of an inch from this end of the groove to this end of the groove, all the way across. Now this is two pieces, not one. You can see it's twice as long. But you'll notice this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece are all the same length. And you'll notice that this piece here and this piece here is kind of exaggerated, right? It wouldn't necessarily need to be that long, but because of the way the LED is made, it has to be this long. We can't just have it be one or two LEDs. And at the end of the day, it looks fine that it's one segment or three LEDs. Okay? So now let's take a look at the actual sign itself. And that is what it looks like hanging on the wall. So you can see that, yes, these are exaggerated here around the A. But at the end of the day, it's really not that big a deal, and it looks great. And the other thing that's really, really important, at least for me it is at the very tip, if you look at some of the LED neon signs, if you look at the very tip, that actually won't be lit to the very, very end. Okay? And that is quite common. I've seen that a lot, but you can see in this case, the entire strip is lit up from end to end, and so we know that all of these were cut exactly where they're supposed to be. Like, for example, this piece of the B here was 3 segments long. So there's 9 LEDs right here, 9 LEDs right here, 3 LEDs, 3 LEDs, 3 LEDs, 3 LEDs. Here there's 6 LEDs, and I don't remember. I think this one was 2 segments also. I think this was 3 segments. This one was possibly 4, and I think this one was 6, whatever it was. But that's one thing that we have a little plugin that works with CorelDRAW that will be able to tell us exactly what our curve length is and exactly what curve length we need, so that when we create the artwork, we can make sure that our groove is set perfectly the way we need it to be. Okay, so let's move on and let's take a look at another option here. So this, you can see, is a little bit different product. You can see that here. So this is the 2-part LED. Okay, so we're still using a solid backer, but again, you can see that all of our grooves, the LED fits in there perfectly. Okay, and this is what it looks like when it's lit up. So you can see that looks nice lit up as well. And then this was a Dr. Pepper sign we did. Now this was also made with our 2-part LED setup. And so you can see what that looks like here. Now, if there's a negative, and I'm a very OCD, and there's some things I don't like about this sign. This sign was made for my daughter's room, so it wasn't a huge deal. But in terms of making a sign for a customer, there are some things I don't like. So, for example, I do not like this right here. You see that right there? I do not like that. I want that to be completely glowing all the way to the tip. You see it kind of here too, right? It's not glowing all the way to the tip. Not glowing all the way to the tip. And then we also see that up here. There's one LED missing from there, and there's one LED missing from there. Okay, and you can even see there's one LED missing here. Okay, so those are some things that I changed up a little bit, and you can kind of see that almost on every segment. There's that little dark spot. Do you see that little dark spot on every segment? So you can kind of see it right there, but there's one right there. There's one down here, right? just that one little spot that is not 100% perfect. Now, for most people, you can see there's definitely one right there. For most people, they probably wouldn't even look at that and look at that as a negative, but I did. And I have since kind of changed the way I make the signs now so that we don't have that issue right there at the very end. Okay, this was like probably the second or third sign I ever made. So it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Now you can see here, this sign here was a little bit different. Now this sign here is the one part LED, okay? So it's a little bit different, but one thing you will note right off the bat is it's fully lit from end to end. And we'll see that here in a minute. So let me go down here and let me show you the finished sign. So this is the finished sign. And so what is the negative here? Well, there's a negative thing that I don't like that we've since resolved, but these are all little things that as you begin to understand how to make an LED sign, these are all little things that do take consideration. So what do I like about this sign? Well, the one thing that I don't like about this sign, and you can see it in every single step, first of all, it's fully lit. From end to end, it's perfectly fully lit. So that's a positive. But what don't I like? I do not like this. I do not like that, that. You see that? There's a tiny little space on every single segment. One there, there, possibly up there, definitely there, and there. You can see that's about an eighth to a quarter of an inch space that was routed out, but the reason it was routed out was for the wiring. Okay, so the wiring is coming out the LED strip and then down into the backer board. So we needed just a little bit of space to fit the wiring. So I didn't like that. Okay, so I was like, well, how are we going to fix that? Well, through watching 10,000 videos on YouTube, found a guy in China, and he answered the question. He didn't speak it, but I just watched his video. It was like 5 times the speed, and I watched it and rewound and watched it again and rewound and watched it again and rewound. Aha! I found out he how he wired his lights, and it was just slightly different than what I was doing, where it allowed the wiring to go straight down from the end of the LED strip, and so you didn't need that little extra notch for the wiring to fit properly. So now we don't have that problem. So let's move on. You could also see that issue here, right? So this was Rolling Stones that we did, but you can really see that issue here where we had to leave that gap for our wiring. Now, it doesn't look terrible, right? It doesn't look awful, but it doesn't look great. But if we look down here, you can see when it's lit up at night, it doesn't look that bad. Now, what other issue is there with this sign? There is one other issue, and I just wonder, like, can people spot it out? And the other issue that I had with this sign was I really did not like. So, okay, if you look at the rolling text up here, that looks pretty good. But if you come down here and look at stones, I was not happy with this. And I was not happy because of this right here. Now, this N and this N are identical. But if you look at the O and the E next to the N, to me, the N looks too small in comparison to the O and the E. Now, up here with the G and the I, the N just kind of looks like it falls into place and no issues. Okay? But my challenge was the E is I had that as 2 segments, and I had each one of these as 1 segment, so I couldn't make it bigger. I couldn't make it smaller because this had to be 2 segments and this had to be 1. Okay? And the O was kind of the same scenario. It's like this had to be this size because it's coming around and coming back and boom, there's no extra room to have less LEDs or more LEDs, so I had to settle for this exact size. And these are all 2 segments. They can't be 3 because there's not room for that. So there is some give and take when we're using that 1 part LED neon. That's the takeaway. There is some give and take. So even though I feel like that N is slightly smaller than I would like it to be, um, it still looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm being nitpicky there. So I feel like it still looks pretty good. That's one thing, though, that the 2 part LED neon kind of breaks away from, is we don't have to be as concerned about that. So we can get more exact sizing because of the way we ultimately will produce the sign. So that's just, another consideration. All right. So let's move on to our last example here. And I thought this was really made a good example because I think this really kind of hits home what I was talking about for this design that we're about to go through. Uh, so if you look at this, this was made with our 1 part LED neon. And so you can see, though, that this, this channel that we routed, it all came together pretty nicely. And the one thing here on the O, you can see here, it starts and stops at the exact same place, unlike our O here. Our O here didn't, okay? And that's partly because of we were still developing our way of going about doing things. And so by changing up the way we did our wiring, you can see it here, we didn't need that extra space. So you don't see, in the M, you don't see that extra little space for the wiring. And our O starts and stops, boom, dead on. Our B here starts here, comes around, and goes up. Okay, so it's connected there. So you can see there's boom, boom. So it's all connected all the way through. Okay, so there is no extra gap like there was with the other ones. Okay, same thing over here. There might be just a little bit extra routed there, but that was because of how we set up the artwork, not really because we needed to do that. Okay, so that is kind of like our evolution of creating signs and learning, different ways of doing things and kind of perfecting it, if you will. Okay. So those are design considerations. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take this sign, but we're going to route out a board, route some grooves in the board so we can fit all of this in place. Okay? And we're going to be using 1 part LED neon for this project because it needed to fall at a certain price point, and the 1 part LED neon fit that price point better than the 2 part LED neon. So that was the consideration there. Okay? So with that said, that's going to do it for this video. Now that you kind of have a fairly good understanding and background of the basic process, now we can move into taking a look at some specifics in part 2 on how to modify this design to fit the way we need it to fit, if we can. Okay, so are there some challenges that we're going to come into? I don't know until I get into it and take a look at the numbers and what it's telling me and how to figure it all out. So with that said, like I said, this is going to do it for this video, and I hope you watch part 2 as we really go through this design and figure out exactly how we're going to go about creating this one. Thanks for watching.